Good morning. This is Mike Billington with the LaRouche Organization video update for Monday, July 25th. I'm substituting today for Harley Schlanger, who's still traveling. I'll also be on tomorrow. Jason Ross will be on Wednesday, and Harley is expected to be back for Thursday and Friday, and we'll see about next week. Now, for today, let's take a look at how the rules-based order is doing these days. These are the rules of the so-called democracies against the so-called autocracies, or the authoritarians that you hear so often from the British and the likes of Anthony Blinken and the fools running the Biden administration. Well, the truth is the unipolar world is no more, except in the imagination of the lords and ladies of Wall Street and the City of London. Unfortunately, these madmen and madwomen have nuclear weapons. So we must find a way to make them change the way they think or replace them. And as you've probably noticed, the Western leaders are indeed falling like flies. Boris Johnson, gone. Draghi in Italy, gone. Macron is still in the presidency in France, but his party lost the legislative elections recently, and he's in a sense a lame duck. Olaf Scholz, the leader in Germany, is under enormous attack for his extremely dangerous and foolish policies of supporting the Nazis in Ukraine, of allowing the green fanatics to shut down their nuclear power and their fossil fuels. And their continuing insanity in these sanctions against Russia, which is killing them, not Russia. So Biden, of course, Biden is now polling at 30% and falling rapidly. And if any of you have held your nose and watched the mainstream media recently, even CNN and MSNBC and the networks that were responsible for the Russiagate hoax and who gave us the Biden-Kamala Harris administration, even they are now regularly covering the fact of Biden's senility. They have spots almost every day saying, well, we're very concerned. This guy seems to be unable to put a sentence together. He's not sure where he is. He loses track of what he's talking about. And this is the head of the so-called, the greatest, strongest leader in the world, and so forth. This is very dangerous. And they're very concerned about what to do about it, because they know the problem, which is that not only is Biden incapable of leadership, but the next in line is Kamala Harris, total airhead. And God forbid, after that, it would be Nancy Pelosi. So this is very dangerous. And as Colonel McGregor, many of you know Colonel McGregor, said on Friday night on the Tucker Carlson show, the bad news is that there's no one capable to fill any of these positions in the US or in Europe who has any idea of how to solve these problems. Now, let's look for a couple of minutes at what the devil himself, as the political and media moguls would have you believe, Vladimir Putin. Let's see what he has to say in his own words, speaking to his own citizens. This was a speech he gave on March 20th. It was given to a very interesting organization called the Agency for Strategic Initiatives. It's an institution somewhat like the suggestion box that we used to have in our factories. Maybe we still do in some cases. But back in the day when American entrepreneurs actually appreciated and encouraged ideas from the skilled workers who worked in their factories, and they would put suggestions in the suggestion box. So in this case in Russia, this is an institution that was set up, I think, a year and a half or so ago, and they have had 90,000 people who send in proposals for national initiatives, which were then discussed by the leaders of the nation, including Vladimir Putin. So here's what Putin had to say to this, to a meeting of this organization. He said, "This is a time when truly revolutionary transformations are gaining momentum and getting stronger. These enormous changes are irreversible, of course. National and global processes are underway to develop the fundamentals and principles of a harmonious, fair, and more community-focused and safe world order as an alternative to the existing world order, or the unipolar world in which we lived, past tense, lived, and which, because of its nature, is definitely becoming a brake on the development of our civilization. The model of total domination by the so-called golden billion is unfair. Why should this golden billion, which is only a small part of the population, dominate everyone else and enforce its rules of conduct that are based on the illusion of exceptionalism? It divides the world into first and second class people and is therefore essentially racist and neo-colonial. The underlying globalist and pseudo-liberal ideology is becoming increasingly more like totalitarianism, and is restraining creative endeavor and free historical creation. No matter how much the West and the supranational elite strive to preserve the existing order, a new era and a new stage in world history is coming. Only genuinely sovereign states are in a position to ensure a high growth dynamic and become a role model for others in terms of standards of living and quality of life, the protection of traditional values and high humanistic ideals, and the development models where an individual is not a means, but the ultimate goal. Sovereignty is about freedom of national development and thus the development of every individual. Now, to me, this sounds very much like things I've seen spoken by American presidents in the far distant future. Perhaps some of us are old enough to remember John Kennedy's statements, which looked ahead to the next 50 years and gave thanks to those 30 to 50 years earlier who had launched great projects, great dam projects, scientific endeavors, which made it possible for his generation to achieve great development, and that we had to think about the future and our contribution to that. We used to have presidents like this. Obviously, people like our founding fathers, like Abraham Lincoln, like Roosevelt, perhaps Dwight D. Eisenhower, Kennedy, Reagan, but not today, not here, not in Europe. We do hear leaders from the third world and emphatically from Russia and China, who actually believe that we are part of one human race and we should be working together. Now, Putin talked about totalitarianism, fascism. That's what he's talking about the West leaders descending into fascism. If you did not watch the July 16th, a week ago, Saturday, LaRouche Organization Manhattan Project, I encourage you to do so. It's at the LaRoucheOrganization.com under the conferences, the Manhattan Project Saturday meetings. And in the July 16th meeting, Mike Robinson, the head of the UK column in Plymouth, UK, Dr. Clifford Kirikoff, the head of the Washington Institute for Peace and Development, and I were on the show with Dennis Speed, addressing the roots of totalitarianism, of fascism, the Nietzschean cults, which gave rise to Mussolini's fascism in Italy and to Hitler's fascism, Nazism in Germany, and discussed how these policies are now being implemented in the UK and in the US. How under the guise of national security, especially since the 9/11 attack, our rights have been stripped away, police state measures have been implemented, censorship has been implemented, the destruction of education is being implemented, the brainwashing with a single social outlook to the world is being imposed on our citizens. The presentations by Mike Robinson and by Dr. Kirikoff will be in the Executive Intelligence Review released this week on Thursday. If you have not already subscribed to the EIR, both the weekly magazine and the EIR Daily Alert, I strongly encourage you to do so, to educate yourself on many of these issues, but also to help us spread this to others, to bring the world out from under this descent into hell. And I have to make the point that one need not be pessimistic about this situation. It's frightening. We must act, but there is a solution. But the point that has to be made is that there's only a solution if it's done with the method of Lyndon LaRouche. There has to be a coming together of world leaders for a new Bretton Woods conference to deal with the collapse of the Western financial system, the dollar-based system. It has to bring the US together with Russia, China, and India and others, not going to war with them, but to come back and negotiate and create a new global financial system which addresses the security and development interests of all social states, sovereign states. This may seem impossible, but remember that there is no solution to the collapsing Western financial system within the system. And therefore, as this crash, this hyperinflationary breakdown crisis, as it unfolds, as more shocks hit the economies, as more citizens recognize that they're being cut off from energy with brownouts and blackouts across Europe and the United States in the middle of heat waves and facing a winter with no electricity, freezing through the winter, as more shocks hit the economy. And as citizens rise up, like the Netherlands farmers striking against the Green New Deal, the insanity of telling farmers they're not allowed to grow food, and this getting support from farmers across Europe and from within the United States, which the Schiller Institute is mobilizing our extensive networks in the farm community in the Midwest and elsewhere to support this international fight against this Malthusian green genocide. And as this evolves, we must be ready with solutions, real solutions, which engage the citizens of the world. So thank you. I'll be back tomorrow. I encourage you to tune in, and I'll see you then.